Anyway, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is about bicycles and how can we try and make them safer. And since we live in such a beautiful city that uses a lot of bikes, it's sort of appropriate to talk about how we make them safe, not only keeping cyclists safe, but also having less accidents with drivers and other pedestrians. So a couple of things that we do every day that we don't even realise is judging time to collisions. And we do them quite often. We might try and catch a door before it closes, we might try and shake someone's hand, we might try and tackle someone, we might try and kick a ball, and so we're always making these judgments about when we're going to collide with something or not. But also we're making decisions about when something's going to arrive. So it might be cars and intersections and judging, how do I just get past someone walking, how do I slow down and go behind them, and we make these decisions at normally quite a subconscious level. And we also know that when we put effort into making roads safer with either lines or markings or protective barriers, that it does make a difference, but also there is still the problem that people have to cross those paths at different times and not hit those bikes or cars not to cross and hit them at the same time. We know from bicycle research that there is some stereotype effects, so we think that when we see someone biking who's older, that they're actually going to be going slower than someone who is younger. We don't really know, though, if there's a difference between male and females, but we do know there's an age stereotype that goes on. So why might we have a problem then with e-bikes? Because they are really high in the number of accidents. And when I started to look at it, and some of you might associate to crossing some of our main roads out here, and you have a look and there's a bike, oh yeah, I've got time to cross, and I look left and I go to cross and suddenly the bike is there much faster than we thought. And often it's because it's an e-bike and not a conventional bike. And so when you go to have a look and you think, oh, I've got time to cross, actually that bike is an e-bike, and why didn't we tell that? Why couldn't we judge whether it was an e-bike or not? So I've got a little video to show you the difference between a couple of bikes, and you see which one is travelling faster. So one's a conventional bike, one's an e-bike. Have a think which one's travelling faster. It's actually they're both travelling the same speed. And so what's different then about an e-bike to conventional bike is often we would be able to look at a bike and see people's pedal speed and think, oh, it's going faster, they're going to be travelling faster. And so it's a key information source that we would look at and think about, okay, I know how fast that bike's travelling. But actually with e-bikes, we remove that mechanical linkage, so to speak, between the pedal speed and the speed of the bike, and sometimes people could be travelling quite slow, but the bike is actually travelling quite quick. So when I started to try and have a look at how can we help people make decisions about bikes, I started to think about the use of lines. This goes back 25 years, but it's actually quite an important study. And so they put people on this little tricycle on this track. They couldn't go left or right, they could only judge their speed, and they had to intercept a ball or arrive at a point rather in time. A ball would go down that track and down here, and they'd have to try and get to that object at the same time it got there. They weren't supposed to get there and wait for it, and they weren't supposed to get there after it arrived. And they found that when they rolled the ball down that track, when it had a textured background, that they actually overestimated how fast that ball was going to start with, and they'd start to pedal too fast, but then as they got closer to the point of interception, they would get that ball at the right time, or a better time than without the textured background. I then looked at another study that happened in America, and with the top picture here, and some of you might associate to this, they had a town that had a lot of crashes, and they tried to put up signs, slow down, you know, those flashing ones, you're going too fast, and they actually just planted trees really close to the road, and people actually slowed down more. And so you might find that when you're travelling around and suddenly there's a lot of cars parked, and you sort of get this perception that you're travelling faster than you are, and so you slow down. And so that use of lines is really helpful for people to try and judge speed. So another study I did, I turned some rowing boats into zebra boats, and we sort of had a look and saw, could that make an impact on the way that rowers moved? And a lot of you in here don't really know a lot about rowing, and it's not a rowing talk, and we'll get back to bikes. But there is a relationship between the movement of a rower and the movement of a boat, and trying to synchronise those two movements together. And we found that when we turned the boats into zebras, it did help them time themselves with the boat. So then I was like, well, how do we help that with back to our e-bike problem? If our feet cadence is not giving us information, what is actually true information on a bike? And I went back to thinking about the front wheel or the wheels, because they're still travelling at a high rate and would be an indication of how fast that bike was going. And when a bike's going from the side, we can sort of see those reflectives parts and we can get an idea of speed. But when a bike's coming more front on or a long way out, we don't get to see those wheel reflectors. So what I tried to have a look at then was, there's a bit on the screen, is could we start to see if we put a stripe around the front wheel of the bike and people could see the speed of the wheel travelling a bit more, would that impact their time to contact estimations? We also looked at, is there a difference between looking at an e-bike to a conventional bike? Does it matter if you're watching a male rider or a female rider? And also, at what distance out were you more accurate at making those decisions? So I'll talk a little bit about the first study, but the second study is probably a bit more interesting. So we set this up in Germany, so that's why the road looks a little bit different from what we would normally see. And the cyclists, as you saw, we'd watch them watching on a video, and either 5 metres before this line or 10 metres before this line, the video would just go blank, and the participant would have a little mouse in their hand and they would click when they thought that bike crossed that line. And so again, we looked at those different variables. So we found that there was actually a stereotype effect. So when they saw the males riding, they thought they were going faster than us, the girls. There was a significant difference about when they made those decisions. So when the video stopped here 5 metres out, they were far more accurate. And that would sort of make sense, that you are more accurate the closer you are to a point of interception. But it is a worry, because probably a few metres out from crossing the road of a bike, you're probably not going to cross. You are actually going to be making decisions when that bike is 5 or 10, 15 metres out from you. And so your ability to be accurate is a bit of a concern there. As the speed increased, people's accuracy dropped off. Again, not a big concern, but when we think about e-bikes, they're often travelling 22, 23, up to 30k an hour, and we're actually not that accurate with watching that distance. And there was some interaction effects between the bike types, so people weren't as accurate with the e-bikes. However, my magic thought of putting a white line along the bike didn't really work, because once the bike got too fast, you couldn't see the line. So then I had to go back to the drawing board, got out some white paint, and made the tyre 50% white and 50% black, thinking would that help people be able to judge the speed of the front wheel better than just my single 5 centimetre white line. So we'll see if this video is going to work. So you get a bit of an idea on the bike on the right, what it's like now turning this bike into a zebra. So the front wheel, you can see same speed, same bike, both on e-bikes. So if we think back to the person on the trike, they found that when they were seeing that contrasting line, they overestimated how fast the ball was going. We had the same effect here. So when they saw a bike with the 50% wheel markings, they actually thought the bike was going faster than it was, and therefore it arrived sooner than they thought it was going to. So that's quite good, really, from a road safety perspective. You think, oh, that's going quite fast, I might wait and not cross the road. Okay. So I guess in summary, it has shown at the moment how that looking at the wheel is probably a bit of a more accurate estimation of speed, rather than potentially with e-bikes having that mismatch in the mechanical information. Top bike on the right there is my bike. I'm constantly spray painting it white because I have a really big engineering problem about how to build a black and white tyre, which I have talked to our engineering department and still can't how do you stitch rubber together. You can get like all yellow tyres or all white tyres, but trying to get 2 different coloured ones. Spray painting is not actually very good. I have gone for a skid a few times when the paint hits other lines and you pull on your brakes. But it is interesting pedaling around with a black and white tyre and how people sort of look, and then they sort of look again. I think it sort of catches their attention. So I'm not sure if we can one day make in the future that all e-bikes have zebra front tyres. I'm not too sure, but probably worth exploring a bit further. That's all from me.